Hello and welcome to Credit Shift, the news update. Delighted to say that today I have a co-host in our CEO, Cormac O'Neill. Thanks for joining us, Cormac.
You're very welcome, Paul. Great to join you on today.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll start out today by just addressing some of the general industry news. So the first thing is what we're seeing is in the mortgage landscape, some changes in the arrears statistics. So drawing on the most recent statistics provided by UK Finance, there is a concerning uptick in mortgage arrears. Specifically, 8,980 households on buy-to-let mortgages were in arrears of 2.5% or more. This is a 28% increase from the previous quarter. Broadly speaking, mortgages in arrears made up to 0.93% of all homeowner mortgages and 0.44% of buy-to-let mortgages in Q2 2023. The shift in repossessions is also noteworthy. 610 mortgage properties were taken into possession this quarter, a decrease of 19% from the last. Contrast this with possessions of buy-to-let properties, which rose by 7% with 440 properties being claimed. Given the rising cost of living, it's evident that some homeowners and renters are feeling the pinch. And with a 12-month freeze on mortgage repossessions not extending to private sector tenants, there are amplified calls for some additions to the renter reform bill to step in and maybe do a bit more for those people. I get a feeling that there's a bit of drip to all this news, and it seems to get a little bit worse every month. Cormac, do you have any comment on this?
Yeah, I got to tell you, Paul, given what we're seeing now, the increase in these numbers probably shouldn't come as a surprise to us, and I'm actually one of those homeowners here because you kind of forget how lucky you are to have been on a tracker mortgage for God, I don't know, many years now, but I'm one of those lucky people who had a tracker mortgage, and it's only now that I'm realizing how lucky I was, right? Because, my interest rate that I'm paying now has gone up considerably in a really short space of time, that you can't even adjust and rebudget. And you combine that with the increases in everyday living from inflation, and it really does bite. There's no two ways about it, and I think we're starting to see that filter through into these numbers that you just outlined. And I think it has, when we think of this in the context of our customers and credit and collections, I think it has implications for people in this industry, in that you just rattled off a number of a series of numbers there, but the people behind these, every single one of them has a story, whether it's me with my story and what it's had on me in terms of the impact on month to month. But there's a lot of people out there with stories that our customers really need to know the details behind and understand them. And I think that's the key word here is knowing, right? Knowing the details of your customers, what's important to them, and equally what's not important to them, and being able to take actions on the back of that knowledge that you have, right? And almost tailoring that for each customer, because one size is not going to fit all in this scenario. It simply isn't. So I think our customers are going to have to look at ways, tools, systems, processes that allow them to access this knowing and knowledge on an individual customer basis. So I think that's what we're going to have to see here.
Okay, thanks for that comment. I think we'll move on to the next segment here. We're going to talk a little bit about the continuing embedded finance revolution, the ever-changing realm of embedded finance. This week, with SMEs navigating financial uncertainties just like everyone else, it's worth noting that 46% of them, as per British bank Sonovate's recent survey, are unsure as to where to find alternate funding sources. So they don't know where to even look for loans. They don't even know to look for different types of bridging finance that they might need. And this opens the door for embedded finance, which is particularly big opportunity. And last week I chanced upon an enlightening Deloitte report, the Ecosystem Imperative Embedded Finance. And the report underscores how merging finance with technology such as geolocation, IoT, smart homes, and machine learning can refine customer experiences. The goal, provide the financial solutions right there where and the customer needs them, where they are, enhancing the accessibility of services to these people. And that also, in many cases, allows inclusivity. It allows you to put potential services in front of people that may not have either known where they were or how to get them. So I think this report really shows how big this kind of opportunity is, again, in terms of the kind of next wave of innovation in financial services. I was wondering if you had anything to add about embedded finance, Cormac, that you've seen.
You know what, Paul? We're in the SME business ourselves, right? So we know this, right? So our business is not in knowing where loans are, right? So SMEs, they're in the business of selling their goods and services, and that's what they're all about, right? And I think what happens a lot of time that they're only looking for these financial options or these loans when they absolutely need to have them, and they're not even sure where to look. So I think embedded finance can really play a role here in educating SMEs as to where they can find these options. When we look at, let's say, our own industry in conversational AI, I think what's going to be really exciting is how we can take embedded finance and putting it into the conversational stream and being able to offer payment options right there and then within the conversation, right? So if you look at what typically happens today, if I'm talking to you and I'm a customer and you're the person I want to make a payment to, as soon as I get out of, I promise to pay you, but as soon as I get out of the conversation, anything can happen, right? My phone can ring, I might have to do an errand, and I might mean to pay you, but because of circumstances, I don't. Right. So if we can embed finance directly within that conversational stream and enable me to do it right there and then, right? Whether that's to make a payment, whether it's to reschedule a payment, or a series of payments even, and set new dates, and be able to do that right there and then directly within the conversational stream, that's going to lead to a much better experience for me, the customer, much less frictional. And also for the enterprise on the other side, obviously it improves efficiency, which cuts out on costs. So yeah, I think you're going to see embedded finance play a role more and more, whether it be directly within SME or whether it be in the consumer side of things. So yeah, keep watching that space for sure.
Yeah, I think the report is also saying something like 60% of all the embedded finance offers relate to payments. So I think a large chunk of that is the buy now, pay later stuff. But I think that just to maybe go back on some of the themes that we touched on earlier, when you're in a conversation, you have an opportunity to pick up cues from a customer that maybe something isn't right, something's changed in their world. They have a sick child, they have a job that's gone from the household. And when they say that in a conversation, you've got the opportunity to be inclusive. You can actually say to them, there's ways of us rescheduling this payment because of that situation. And you can embed that response capability within the conversation. And that's inclusive because you are not just getting a straight yes or no press a button payment from someone. You're actually giving them the opportunity to disclose something to you and then for you to reconfigure a service within that conversation and then relaunch it. So I think it's actually a great example of something like a payment service, which is a part of embedded finance, but also the wider opportunity that there is for convenience, for inclusiveness, and for a range of other things. So I'd recommend anyone to look up that report, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes. Embedded finance is certainly a very interesting area to think about strategically for how it's going to affect your business in the next 5 years. Moving on to the next section, just following on from that conversation about conversational AI, ChatGPT, and related AI, all this is increasing in prominence in the overall corporate sector. So EY CEO Outlook Pulse Survey offers a snapshot into the corporate mindset regarding AI. 88% of CEOs are integrating AI into their capital strategies. 43% are investing right now, with the remaining 45% planning substantial investments in the coming year. But there's also a parallel concern about its ethical deployment. It seems to be like 50-50. Half of them think it's going to be net good for people. 50% very concerned about unintended consequences of AI. It's clear that the key motivators here are cost reduction and productivity gains, whether it's onboarding or training or thinking about the replacing entire processes. The transformative power of AI cannot be underestimated. But Cormac, you've been speaking to some BPOs recently on this subject. Is there anything that you can kind of nuance this report with?
Yeah, so this is, I find this one, right, very, very interesting and almost comical to a degree here, because, let's go back, 6 months, what was the big topic, that enterprises were grappling with, and it was digitalization, right? Digital transformation, digitalization, right? Next minute out comes ChatGPT, right? And digitalization is like the jilted lover. It's been pushed aside, and ChatGPT has, given AI its superpower, right? So now, all these companies are saying, let's park digitalization. What's our AI strategy? What are we doing? Where's our ChatGPT? What are we doing with this, right? So, don't get me wrong here. I think it's brilliant, right? I love it because, that's what we do at Webio. We do conversational AI. So, anything that gives that a bit of a boost and a bit of limelight, I'm delighted with it, But so what I'm seeing just from talking to people, how are they looking at using this, and where do they think it's going to give them the biggest impact, right? And you said it there, Paul. It's going to be in the cost reduction side is almost like the knee-jerk reaction. How can I use this to reduce my costs? And the first thing that jumps to mind when you think about that is automation, and how do we automate more and more customer interactions so we can, give the customer the answers they're looking for to their queries, but do it in the cheapest manner possible, right? Nobody reaches out and contacts an enterprise because they're bored and they want to have a chat, right? They do it because they're looking for a query to be answered or a problem to be solved. And if you can use AI, and specifically conversational AI, to do that, happy days, right? But there are other areas that I think, enterprises are looking at. And one area in particular is the area of recruitment, and how do we, skill up our teams faster and with more quality? And how can you use this emerging technology of AI and ChatGPT and generative AI to train your staff and get them up to speed much quicker and to a higher standard? And that's where we're also seeing companies start to look at, and how can they have, almost given their ages, and we work in a contact center environment. So let's say somebody who's involved in customer engagement, how can you give them almost like a AI co-pilot to help them do their job each day? And I think that's an interesting area to watch when it comes to customer contact. So look, I'm loving ChatGPT and what it's done for the industry. It's made AI sexy again. Who wouldn't want that?
Well, I think the word I got back from our guys talking to BPOs was that the pressure is there to meet the volume of interaction still, but you can't actually even hire the amount of bodies to throw at the problem. So the people just aren't available. And then when you do have new recruits, you have to train them up. And then you also have to retain people. So we don't really have an AI problem. We have a people problem. How do we find, how do we train up, and how do we retain the human resources in our businesses so that we can provide the level of services that often we're contracted to do as well in the first place. And I think where the productivity gains for the individual is showing up in adopting AI co-pilots and AI tools, that's been kind of soaked up by the fact that they still don't have enough people to do the jobs that they need to do. So I think maybe some of the benefits might be hidden at the moment, but the numbers we're seeing are fairly, I know we haven't published them yet, but we're seeing some fairly dramatic like productivity gains in the processes. So my guess is same as yours in that I think the AI will see some exuberant adoption. There'll be some speculative projects on generative AI, etc. But I think it'll pretty quickly come down to focusing on where am I seeing the outcomes here and how can I measure this in the short term? Because I think that's another thing that I'm getting from that report is that in the short term, CEOs are having to really, really focus because the pressure is on everybody to perform right now, and they can't afford to wait for the longer term to play out. And longer term plays need shorter term payoffs. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, so just to combine the first discussion we had, or the first question we had there, Paul, in terms of the economy and rising costs and inflation and all the rest, right? So it's short-term need because we're seeing a spike in short-term demand in terms of people needing questions answered and problems solved. So, it's a real challenge for enterprises and contact centers today. How do you ramp up your capabilities to meet this spike as a result of what's happened? That's not easy. That's not easy to do. So therefore, you are seeing this. Okay, how do we use the tools that are out there and this advance in AI and conversational AI to help us meet those challenges? So yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's all been. There's some really good reports to dig out there in the show notes. I urge everyone to go check them out. There's some light weekend reading there for everybody. And maybe, Cormac, we might revisit some of these AI topics next week, given the kind of prominence that they have in the general environment. We might take a couple of examples and just use the next news and update to just give people a couple of examples of how this is happening in the real world.
Absolutely. Would love to, Paul.
Okay, folks, thanks for joining us today on Credit Shift. Subscribe to us as quickly as you can. Tell your friends about it and check out webio.com and find out what Webio is up to. Thanks, everyone, for joining us again today.